Mother keeps seeing little boy at her daughter's grave until one day she decided to ask him. It's painful because of how much you are connected and cared for your child. Also, the circumstances under which you lost. It is an unnatural kind of loss, completely unexpected, and cannot be anticipated or prepared for. We all will lose our parents. That's expected. As the years go by and we see our folks age, we mentally prepare ourselves. We know, except for when we are little, that of course our parents will die in our lifetimes. And 99.9% of the time that happens, loss of a spouse is harder. If you've been together for many years, however, we know that one of us will go before the other. It's unlikely that you both will die at the same time. So again, we can mentally prepare ourselves even more. So if you know your spouse has a health issue, no one expects that the child that they helped create will die before them, especially when they are small. Your entire life is focused on keeping that child alive. Some of that is instinctual, so very deep within us. We have a story here for you with such a tragedy, but where also something beautiful takes place. Why was the little boy at the grave? The stranger and the officer? But before we meet the little boy at the grave, we have another special story for you about two strangers who came together through tragedy and a good deed. Officer Sonia Dial gave a salute during the funeral procession of a deceased officer. The officer had died during an attempt to arrest someone. It rained when the funeral procession passed by, but Sonia stayed out of respect. A passerby who saw this couldn't just let it happen. He stood under his umbrella nice and dry, and thought that the officer could use some protection from the rain. What would you do if you met such a dedicated officer standing in the rain? The gentleman then walked up to her and held his big umbrella over her as he stood behind her for 30 minutes with the umbrella over her head, but she wasn't aware of it. She could not see the man because her hat blocked her view. She did find it a bit strange, however, that people passing by were taking pictures. She thought it was normal what she was doing. Every officer is saluted in this way when they die. She didn't understand why people would take photographs of the scene. The man didn't speak to her, and when she turned around, he was gone. However, a photo of the two came online. It attracted the attention of many. Everyone wanted to know who the mysterious man was, who had done this act of kindness. There was even a Facebook request to find the mysterious man. The gentleman holding the umbrella was Gene Allen. He worked in the same building as Sonia. However, that was not the reason he held the umbrella above her. He was at work that day looking for updates on the procession. He wanted to know if it passed by the building where he worked, and if so, he would go outside to show his respect. And so he did. The procession was a very emotional display for Gene. He was impressed that Officer Sonia also stood there to pay her respects to the deceased agents. Despite the rain, that day brought a change in Tiffany's life. Thanks to John, she learned that people do care about officers. Sometimes it is easy to lose hope. As an officer, it is nice to see good things in people. Later, when Tiffany and Gene met again, they embraced each other and Sonia thanked him for his kindness. The letter to the military mother, a gesture of kindness out of respect, can really make all the difference in somebody's life, like in the story of Tiffany and Gene. In the following story, a stranger performs a friendly act as well. A mother of two named Jody was a hairdresser in daily life and worked in a hair salon. When she left for work one afternoon, she saw something unusual on her black and white car. There was something strange on her windscreen. It was hard to see what it was from a distance, but as she approached, she saw it was a piece of paper. What could it be? Was it a fine from the police? Luckily, it wasn't. It also wasn't an advertising leaflet or any other advertisement. It was a handwritten letter. Who was it from, and what did it say? Did she have a silent admirer? Jody got confused. Why would somebody do this? She hesitated but took the letter and opened it. The letter came from an unknown person, and she didn't expect what was in it. The person who wrote the letter had seen a sticker on the back of Jody's car. The sticker on the back of Jody's car said, "Proud parent of a soldier." The anonymous writer wanted to get in touch with Jody through a positive letter. The slogan on the sticker was simple, but meant a lot to the writer. This person was grateful to soldiers and wanted to give something back. Out of gratitude and respect, the writer not only left a letter, but also a 20 note. The letter had instructions on how to use the money. The person explained that Jody had to spend the money on a special soldier in her life. She should send the money to the soldier if he was in the Middle East for a meal or something luxurious. Or she could keep the money until the soldier had returned safely. The letter touched Jody deeply. She had two sons who were both in the army, and like any mother or relative, she always had her boys in mind, and she worried about them. When she received the letter, both sons were miles away at work. Her eldest son, Jacob, was 22 and abroad in South Korea. Her 20-year-old son, Daniel, was stationed in North Carolina. The letter reminded her of her sons, but the letter ended only with the instructions. The person also told her that she prayed every day for the army all over the world. She prayed especially for those who were in a dangerous war zone. She signed the letter with all the best, Sally. But Jody did not know anyone named Sally, so it was a stranger who had made her day. Did you ever make a stranger's day? Jody read the letter twice before the contents sank in. Then she broke into tears and was very grateful to this person for showing her support. She missed her sons very much at that moment, and the letter meant a lot to her. It came at the right time because she could use some support. The fact that a random stranger had taken a moment out of her day to comfort someone else touched her. Jody would like to meet this person and say thank you. She also wants to tell this person how much the little gesture meant to her and to her family. So you can see what a small gesture can do. Now we return to the mother and the little boy on the grave. The story begins with Thomas, who joined the army in 2007. 1 year later, he married his high school girlfriend, Jolly, and this made him very happy. The couple got a son together, and Thomas was just very happy. Shortly after that, however, he had to go to Afghanistan. It was difficult for Thomas to depart and leave his family behind, but he had to do his job and serve his country. After saying goodbye to his wife and son, he left. Jolly had a nasty feeling in her stomach. It felt like something horrible might happen. And indeed, during a patrol in Afghanistan, a rebel they encountered killed Thomas. The rebel wore a vest loaded with explosives and attacked the group. Thomas died instantly and never returned home. It later turned out that Thomas had switched places with another soldier that day. He had saved this soldier's life and was therefore twice a hero. He had made a sacrifice for his country and his fellow soldiers. It came as a great shock to his family, of course, to hear the news that their beloved Thomas had passed away. Thomas got a military funeral, and he got his final resting place in a cemetery where other Army heroes also lay buried. A year after his death, he was remembered on Commemoration Day. Every year, they commemorate soldiers on Commemoration Day. On that day, besides the relatives, some strangers want to show the gratitude and support to the Army. Thomas' family has been there every year since his death. But after 4 years after his death, when Thomas' family was commemorating him for the 4th time, something unusual happened in the cemetery there. There was also a little boy called Mason. He was there with his mother and held her hand. Together, they placed a national flag on every tombstone. That was their way of showing respect for the heroes. They were doing that when Mason suddenly disappeared. His mother shouted at him, and pretty soon she saw him. He went and sat by one of the gravestones. Whose grave was it? Yes, you guessed it. He sat near Thomas' grave and carefully read the engravings. He had so many questions to ask his mother. He wanted to know more about Thomas' life and his family. Despite Mason being so young, he could feel the pain that Thomas' family had gone through. His mother answered his questions and told him about other soldiers. When Mason heard the stories, some tears rolled down his cheek. These memories touched him deeply. In the following year, he returned to Thomas' grave. But this time, he would also do a gesture as a sign of gratitude. What do you think he did? During the ceremony, Mason sat next to Thomas' gravestone. He carried flowers and a drawing with him that he had made. It showed his hero from comic books, called Captain America. When people asked the 7-year-old Mason why he had done this, he replied that Thomas was a hero just like Captain America.